Today on Outside the Box Reviews, we are taking a look at the NECA, An American Werewolf in London, Kessler Wolf figure. This thing is a pretty big figure, and not something I thought we would get from NECA, but it does seem like when they're not just making 800 versions of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle figures, they are trying to branch out a little bit in the horror genre. Probably doesn't hurt that some of the biggest properties are kind of tied up in weird legal issues and shit at the time. But yeah, I mean, we got some McCready stuff, some Things stuff, and now we're getting American Werewolf in London stuff. As far as I'm aware, I don't think anybody's ever done a true, like, this scale figure of the Kessler Wolf, or even a real action figure of any kind. I think there might have been a couple statues, but I think we've seen prototypes of other companies trying to do a Kessler Wolf, and they never really came to fruition. I want to say Soda was one of those. I know they did the Demons, or I'm pretty sure they did the Demons at one point, that NECA's also doing now. But, you know, for being as big of a movie as it is, it's kind of a bit of an elusive character in horror collecting. I picked this up at my local comic shop. I think he was like around $50. I don't know if it's going to be different at big box stores. I was having this conversation the other day with somebody. I think I've realized that the prices I'm seeing at my local comic shop are usually pretty close to what I'm seeing at Target or Walmart, but Target or Walmart sections are all such a mess that the figures never have a price on them anyway, so if I don't scan them to see the price, I don't really pay attention to how much they cost until I get up to the register, and at that point I'm pretty much committed to the purchase, so I don't know. Maybe there's not really a point to what I was just saying, but it kind of feels like a trend lately. So this guy has no real accessories to speak of, so we're going to jump right into the sculpt. So I got a macro lens for my phone, which I use as my camera for Christmas, and I thought it might be cool to take a look at it way up close while looking at the head sculpt. Unfortunately, I can't get my tripod close enough, so it's got to be handheld for right now, but yeah, we can take a look at the first of the two heads it comes with, and it looks pretty good, to be quite honest. Like, the paint is relatively clean, even this zoomed in. The eyes look pretty darn nice yellow with some kind of orange in there with the dark pupil. We have some shading in the fur, which is pretty nicely sculpted, a little bits of blues and grays and browns. It gets lighter up towards the nose, which has a nice kind of crackly pattern on it. And then we have those nasty ass teeth, very yellow, very gross looking. You can see this close up that the fangs are pretty rounded. I also don't totally love the paint on the gums. It seems a little too bright pink to me, but it's not terrible at all. It's just, I don't know, maybe a little bit of a weird choice. So this head is just with the teeth basically closed. The mouth's still a little bit open, but, you know, mostly a closed mouth sculpt. Got the ears back there, all that fun stuff going on here. The secondary head features an open mouth. You have the same basic details there on his eyes and nose and fur, but this big old gaping mouth of doom going on here. We also have bloody teeth, and I think I like this coloration a lot better. I have a nice gloss there on his tongue, which looks nicely detailed. The only thing that kind of bugs me is you can see they detailed the inside of the mouth, the root of the mouth, all that, but then you just kind of have like the black plastic of the rest of its head just at the very back. I don't know what I really wanted back there, but it just feels unfinished a little bit. The kind of jowls around the side of his mouth came out pretty good. Overall, I think it's a pretty solid secondary head sculpt and works well for the character. The way they do these head sculpts is interesting to me because we do have kind of just, you know, it's almost like you could mount it like a head on the wall kind of thing where it cuts off. There is a lot of like drooping hair down there at the bottom that kind of disguises the joint. And then they have this free floating kind of mane, I guess you could call it, over the neck joint. So when you put it all together, and the body also has that same flowing hair around the front there, so it kind of helps hide the joint fairly well. It does seem at times that it's a little thin or a little too 2D for my taste. Like, you could kind of see at certain places, if you're not reposing the hair piece in the middle, that it looks a bit disjointed. But I think overall, for what it is, they did a pretty good job trying to kind of mask the joint and all that without having, you know, actual fur to give it that texture. The rest of the body really just continues that fur sculpt. There's not a whole lot to say here. The front of the torso is very large, just like it is in the film. We have the big, beefy legs going down the front. The front paws are well done. They kind of have a bluish color and have less hair on them. We have those crazy gross looking claws on there. Similar with the back leg with a slightly different sculpt. Pretty nice detail throughout it. Got the little extra claw up there, way high on the back leg as opposed to the front. You got a short stubby little wolf tail on there. I do like they have the fur kind of long in the back of the legs. Like they really didn't skimp on the fur on this guy, which you really could have, made it tighter fitting to the body to give it, more, just kind of make it easier to create or easier to articulate. So I think they did a pretty decent job on the sculpt here. It's just not a lot to talk about because he's just furry from head to toe pretty much. Not much different on the underside. Kind of all the long matted fur kind of meeting in the middle and is it a reverse mohawk going down his crotch? I don't know what you want to call that. And then we have a single peg hole at the bottom of his back left foot. For articulation, as you saw before, he has a double ball joint at the head. So you can move, the front of the head, you can move it at the body as well. And as you rotate that and move it around, you have to play with this kind of floating piece in the middle. You, of course, can rotate the head side to side without any real issues. Go a little bit up, a little bit down. It doesn't really matter which head you have. You don't have a whole lot of range of motion out of that, but you can use the double ball joint to kind of get it a little higher up. I don't know, it's a werewolf. It works for me. I don't think you need a whole lot more range than that. The front legs have a joint at the arm, I guess you could call it. You rotate 360. It goes out to the side relatively far, probably about 45 degrees to the main body. We can bend at the elbow, single joint, but it gets in tight enough, I think, for this character. You can also rotate at that joint. You can rotate at, I guess you'd call it the wrist, as well as hinge there. And then at the toe, you can also hinge up and down. And there is no pivot in that or anything, I don't believe. You might be able to get a little bit out of it, but I don't think it's really meant to pivot. We have a mid-torso ball joint, which doesn't have a huge range on it, but you can get it a little side to side. Vary a little bit up and down. You can also rotate there. Back leg is kind of on a ball joint, so you can rotate that forward and back as well as out to the side, maybe about 45 degrees there as well. We have a single joint at the knee, which is pretty tight on mine. Not a huge range of motion, but it kind of works for what this is. At the ankle as well, you have a hinge, and you could also rotate there. The toes will rotate up and down or hinge up and down, and I think we have a little bit of pivot there on the toes. I think the best size comparison we could do is just with a normal kind of human character. So here he is next to Casey Jones. You can see he comes up to maybe about his mid bicep. And if we put him behind him, you could see he's, pretty long forward to back. If you put Casey down on the floor with his legs in kind of a normal standing pose, not like a lunging pose or anything, I think they're roughly the same height, I guess you would say. Overall, I think this is a pretty solid figure. I kind of wish there was something else that came with it for being a $50 piece. He is large, but for like $30, $35, we're getting big old Jason figures with a ton of accessories. This thing just coming with an alternate head. I don't know, you would have just liked something else, even if it was just like a slaughtered lamb sign that you could hang up. Not that this guy is ever at the slaughtered lamb, but just some little kind of set decorating piece you could include. And honestly, like, posability, while it's not super limited, like, you're gonna have him on all fours, walking around or standing still. There's not a ton you could really do with this character. So it's kind of more of a statue at times than it is an action figure, I think. Most of the articulation you're probably gonna mess with on a regular basis is gonna be in his neck. But I think he's still cool. I would still recommend him. I just feel like if I got a little bit more, I'd feel better about recommending him, if that makes any sense. But still a pretty well done piece. In full disclosure, I did pick up one of the demons from American Werewolf in London as well. His leg broke off right out of the package, so I'm gonna try to exchange him, but to be quite honest, I'm like not super wanting to keep it, so I may just end up returning it. So I don't know if that review will ever come out, but I guess only time will tell. So that's it for this one. I will see you guys in the next one later.